In this video, I'm going to explain everything you need to know to build a successful freelance copywriting business in the next 12 months. I'm going to break this process into 6 practical, straightforward steps, and we're going to ignore 80% of the tips, strategies, and tactics that get flown around online in favor of focusing on the 20% that's actually going to make a difference, that's going to actually let you make real money, real income, which I think is the key to building a successful writing business. Research, practice, and training are all important things, and we'll cover them in this guide. But ultimately, what's going to change your life, what's going to make this real, is when you land that first gig, when that first person pays you a few $100s to go and write a piece of copy for them. That's when everything changes. That's when this becomes an actual business. And the vast majority of aspiring freelance writers are much closer to that experience than they realize, but they push it off for months and months and months because they don't think they're ready. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through 6 super straightforward steps that are going to get you to that first gig as quick as possible and turn this from a theory to a reality. So if you're here to learn how to build a real, tangible, profitable writing business, not next year, not 5 years from now, within the next few months, stick around. Hey everyone, my name is Jacob McMillan and I have been a freelance copywriter for the last 10 years. I started out approaching this business as a part-time pursuit, and then when I went full-time, I made $80,000 my first year, $130,000 the year after that, bumped that up to north of 200K the third year. That is not citing affiliate income, that is not product sales, that is not some other revenue stream that I'm using to inflate my freelance numbers in order to pitch you this idea that's grander than the actual business that I'm telling you about. Beyond just my own experience, I have a pretty large network of friends and acquaintances in the freelance space who are doing multiple 6 figures across nationalities, genders, ethnicities, all crushing it in this space solely from freelance writing. And even beyond that, I've worked with thousands of students over the last few years, many of whom have hit 5 figures within their first 1 to 3 months, and even 6 figures within their first 6 to 12 months. Freelance copywriting is not easy, but it is accessible. If you are someone who has a core writing ability, it doesn't take much other than some intentional learning and a lot of hustle to build a successful business. And so in this video, I'm going to break down these 6 practical, entirely unsexy steps that will get you from $0 to potentially 6 figures over a 12-month period. There are a lot of business models out there that are high risk where success is not likely. This is not one of those situations. This is a lucrative, very in-demand service business that millions of writers across the world are succeeding with. If you follow these steps with enough persistence, you can virtually guarantee success for yourself without needing to buy any courses, any paid coaching, anything else. Pure persistence, pure legwork on these very simple steps, and you can hit your goals as a freelance writer. So with that said, let's dive in. This video is sponsored by Copy AI, a toolkit that helps writers, marketers, and freelancers skip writer's block, brainstorm ideas, and quickly create first draft copy for themselves and their clients. Head on over to copy.ai/Jacob to get a free account and try out the value proposition tool, which I personally developed with the Copy AI team and use on a weekly basis. Step number 1, of course, you have to learn the basics of copywriting. Copywriting is simply the written messaging created for a business or organization with the goal of selling or promoting a product, service, or brand. When you see an ad while scrolling on social media and it has, text and words in it, that's copywriting. When you click on that ad and come to a landing page or a product page, all the writing you see on there is copywriting. When you get an email from a brand or influencer or someone you follow, the words in that email are copywriting. In fact, the vast majority of the writing that you will read on a day-to-day basis is copywriting. And in most cases, copywriting is essentially just persuasive writing organized into specific structures and specific frameworks. So learning copywriting is essentially just learning the basics of persuasive writing and the basic rules of how that writing is presented in various scenarios online. I've put together a free blog post that takes you through all the basics of copywriting, and you can find that in the description to this video or audio, or you can head on over to jacobmcmillan.com and find it there. So that's step number one. And really, we're talking about the time it takes to read a handful of blog posts here. This should not be a 1 month, 2 month, 6 month process of you trying to learn the fundamentals of copywriting. This is just a few minutes of reading. And then the way we're going to actually internalize this information and make it a part of us is to actually go practice copywriting itself. That's how you're going to master the principles of copywriting, the basics of copywriting, is by actually going through and writing copy. It's not going to be by memorization. It's not going to be through reading. It's going to be through doing. So that takes us to step number 2, which is to practice with one copywriting deliverable. Now, what do I mean by deliverable? There are a lot of different types of copywriting that you can find online. We talked about a few of them just a few minutes ago, where we said, ad copy, email copy, landing pages, product pages. These are all different deliverables, each of which will have a different structure, a different objective, a different approach for writing the copy. So what I recommend doing is picking a single one of these types of copywriting, a single deliverable, and investing your practice time on that one specific type of deliverable. Now, there's 3 different ones that I recommend choosing from initially: website copy, email copy, or blog writing. The reason I recommend website copy, email copy, and blog writing is because all of these things are in very high demand. They are relatively easy to learn, and you don't really need to become any sort of a niche expert to find ways to land gigs in each of these categories. It's just sort of the sweet spot in the sense that everyone has engaged with these types of copywriting throughout their lives. You're already going to be familiar with these things. They're relatively easy to learn. Nearly every business on the planet needs all 3 of these things. Some of them, will only use one or the other. But in the 21st century, every business on the planet is either going to have all 3 of these things or be considering hiring for them at some point. So it's a great entry point for beginners to dive into. And realistically, you could make any one of these your entire career solely by itself. I know a ton of copywriters who only do email copy and are absolutely killing it. I know a bunch of blog writers who only write blogs and have been clearing $20K per month for the last 3 years. And I know a ton of copywriters who primarily do website copy and have made a ton of money from that. Over the course of my own career, I'd say that website copywriting and blog writing made up the vast majority of my freelancing income. And since I've begun building some of my own businesses on the side using my own copywriting and content writing, email copy has become a huge part of what actually drives profit for my own businesses. So I've had a ton of experience with all 3 of these, and I've seen the most consistent success with my students in these 3 categories. So all that to say, pick one and start practicing. Let's say you picked website copywriting. You're going to go look at successful websites. You're going to go follow successful copywriters and see the websites that they're writing. And you're going to look at the copy and think through what makes this good. You're going to look at it, you're going to evaluate it, and then you're going to try to emulate it by writing copy for a website. Now, you could write this copy for a fake business that you made up as a practice project. You could pick a real brand and just start writing a new version of website copy for them without having any connection to them. The best case scenario, and what I have students do in my paid course, is reach out to people in their warm network, people with real businesses, people actually making money through their businesses online, and pitch them on rewriting the copy for their website, either for a small fee or for free. And the point here is that we want you to go through the process from start to finish of writing website copy for a real client or writing email copy for a real client. Even if you're not getting paid for it, even if you don't have a connection to the client, just going through that process is going to teach you a lot. And on the other end, give you the confidence that you could actually do this in a paid client situation. And just like with step number 1, this should not be a lengthy process. This should not be 3 months or 6 months or 2 years. I don't want you doing any more than 2 unpaid practice projects, and that can be done in 1, maximum 2 months, with the time factor really only being contingent on hearing back from people and coordinating with someone if you're doing the optimal version of this. If you're just picking a fake company or a brand that you have no connection to and going through a dummy practice project, you could probably do that in 1-2 weeks. And once we're done with that practice, once we've gone through the process of actually writing a piece of copy, we're ready for step 3, which is pitching real clients. Now, this is where everything either changes or everything stays the same. The only way to make real profit as a new copywriter is to get out and pitch. You have to put your business in front of potential paying clients. And if you're willing to do that, you're going to land some, you're going to make money. If you aren't willing to do that, you probably aren't. You probably aren't going to land anything. You probably aren't going to make any money. This is ultimately how every business model on the planet makes money. They come up with something that people want. In your case, we already have that covered. It's writing. Every business on the planet needs writing. And then the second factor is you get it in front of people who are willing to pay for it. Two things: have something people want, get it in front of people who are willing to pay for it. And while a lot of businesses will come in with advertising budgets or ways to use automation or capital to get their offer in front of people who are willing to pay, if you don't have either of those things, the only way to do it, and the way people have been building businesses for centuries, is pure hustle. You just got to get out there and put your offer in front of as many people as possible. That's it. It's not fun. It's not sexy. It's how you build a business. And it's the most challenging at the very beginning. When I was first getting started, it would take me around 50 pitches to land a new gig. And while that might sound like a lot of work, and it was, at the same time, how cool is that you know that you can increase your income with a specific amount of hustle, that you know that I'm just 50 pitches away from making more money. You can't do that as an employee. In many cases, working harder, doing extra work doesn't increase your income at all. If a new expense were to come up and you were going to need an extra $5,000 in the next 30 days, there'd be no way to do it. Your salary is fixed. But as a freelancer, I know if I need an extra $5,000 in the next 30 days, all I got to do is send enough pitches. In fact, about a year ago, I came across a challenge on Twitter where someone was saying, if you needed $5,000 in the next 48 hours, what would you do? And a lot of people were kind of giving troll answers like, oh, I just, spend $10,000 in ad budget, or I'd do something illegal, or I'd scam a bunch of people. But for me, it was pretty simple and straightforward. I'd just send out pitches. And at that point in my career, I no longer needed to spend 50 pitches to land a new client. And I predicted in the Twitter thread that it would take me about 10 pitches to land a $5,000 gig, a very specific type of gig, which I outlined in the tweet. So I went out and did it. And less than 48 hours later, I had $5,000 in my PayPal account for the exact type of gig that I predicted I could land. I set 10 pitches. I didn't hear back from, I think it was 4 or 5. I heard back from 4 or 5. Most of them were no's, but one of them said yes, and that's all it takes. And that's not the only time that pitching has come through for me. Early on in my career, I had my biggest client, my biggest source of income, drop me sort of without warning a few months before my wedding, which I was paying for myself, and there were quite a few, bills associated with that. I went into overdrive, spent about 30 days pitching, ended up landing several different gigs, including a $14,000 website copywriting project that paid for my entire wedding and then some. And while at this point in my career, I don't do nearly as much pitching, I get a lot of clients through referrals and SEO and things like that. It's still a huge source of peace of mind and security and confidence knowing that, I have pitching in my back pocket at any time. If all the things that I've built crash and burn, I'm just some number of pitches away from being able to go out and make whatever amount of money I need. And this is true for you too. This is how you're going to build your freelance writing business within that first year in particular. It's going to come through getting out there and putting your business in front of as many people as possible. So that's step number 3, and it is the most important step in this video. If you don't remember anything else, just remember that pitching is your ticket to a successful business. Step number 4 is an extension of step number 3, but it's something that a lot of people overlook, which is the moment you land a client, the moment you have a successful project with someone, the type of project that you'd want to repeat, you then want to pitch clients that look similar to the one you just worked with. I call these lookalike clients. So the moment you have a successful client project, you are going to start pitching every business that looks like that client. And the reason for this is that you now have a much more compelling pitch for each additional client than you did at the beginning. You can now say, hey, I've worked with someone who looks very similar to you. I have experience working with a business model similar to yours on the type of copy and project similar to what you are looking for. And it's just a much more compelling piece of social proof and experience that you can put in front of potential new clients. When you're first starting out, you have nothing to show. You're just showing maybe a few sample or practice projects, but it's very vague. It's very unconnected. you're going to land clients, but it's going to be a very small percentage of the people you pitch. Once you have that first client and you are pitching people who look similar to that client, your percentage of successful pitches is going to increase. And this is kind of how it's going to look over the course of your career. Every new little bit of experience that you can get is going to make it that much easier to land the next project and gain that next little bit of experience. It sort of has a snowball effect. If you're approaching it intentionally, if you are intentionally leveraging each experience to pitch relevant people, pitch people who that experience is going to matter to, and if you're, coming in with the confidence to say, hey, look what I've done, rather than, hey, look at all the things I haven't done. The moment I had published 2 blog posts, I started sending people pitches with my top 2 published articles. It's not rocket science. It's just stretching every little bit of mileage that you can get out of every new piece of experience you gain along the way. So as the moment you land a client or 2, you're then going to start pitching other clients that look just like that one. And you're going to start landing those additional projects much faster in a much shorter timeline than it took you to land that first one. So pitching is your key to making money within your first year as a copywriter. And what I recommend doing is setting yourself a target of 20 pitches every single week. Now, there's a couple reasons for this number. One, I think it's pretty attainable for most people. We're talking 4 to 5 pitches a day for 4 to 5 days. Anyone can do that. Plus, it gets you to about 80 pitches per month, which I think is enough for most people to land a client each month. Now, you might get unlucky. You might not land a client within your first 100, maybe even 200 pitches. It's possible. You could get super lucky and have your very first pitch succeed. I had one student whose very first pitch to his warm network resulted in a 5-figure project right off the bat. That's not typical, but luck works both ways. You can get lucky, you can get unlucky. The key is that over time, things are going to average out. And with enough persistence, you are going to land projects consistently if you're putting the work in, if you're pitching, if you're following up on your pitches. But I've found that 20 pitches per week kind of hits that sweet spot of results and accessibility for most people. If you can do more than that, amazing. But that's a good starting point. Now, everything we've covered so far in just 4 steps is enough for you to be making full-time income, potentially even 6 figures within a 12-month period. However, there's 2 additional steps that are going to be critical over the course of your career. And if you have the bandwidth in that first year, you can begin working on them right away, and they are even going to increase the results you get within that 12-month timeline. So the first of these is step number 5, which is to begin building what I call a recurring leads channel. Now, what this means is building a system that brings leads to you so that you no longer have to go out and pitch. Pitching is incredibly effective, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And at a certain point, once you've landed a pretty good client base, we want to spend less time pitching and more time working with clients, working with higher quality clients, and building a lead system that brings high quality clients to you is how we're going to do that. There's a bunch of different ways we can do that. For me, the most effective one throughout my career has been SEO. And that's just because it's something that I'm good at, that I've enjoyed learning about, enjoyed practicing. And so bringing people to my website by ranking for certain terms in Google is how I got a lot of my business and how I still get a lot of my business to this day. I have another friend who built her entire business solely through LinkedIn, through posting and marketing and building her audience on LinkedIn. I have another friend who has done it solely through Twitter. He's really effective at sending tweets that get a lot of engagement and response. And he has built a very lucrative copywriting business just by talking about copywriting and marketing and building his audience on Twitter. I have another friend who doesn't really do any of that. He's just been so good at generating referrals and retaining clients month to month that he's making $20K per month without having to do hardly any marketing. His clients stick around for years and years and years. So he's been able to do incredible numbers without even having to master some sort of third-party marketing platform. The thing that connects all these strategies is that they take time, they take intentionality, they take small, consistent steps day in and day out over months and even years to pay off. Unlike pitching, where we send the outreach out right now and are able to get some sort of a response in the short term, these channels often take 9, 12 months to even begin paying off but then they scale from there and they become long-term assets for your brand and business. So if you're super pressed for time, if you're trying to build a freelance writing business on the side over the next 12 months while working a full-time job, maybe while having, kids or other responsibilities outside of work, I wouldn't recommend worrying too much about that. I'd focus on the pitching. I'd focus on hitting the amount of income you need to replace your job income to where you can quit and free up some bandwidth for yourself, and then begin working on these longer term projects, these longer term audience building, recurring lead channels. And finally, that takes us to our last step, step number 6, which is you have to be continuously improving both your sales ability and your writing ability. So I said earlier that every business model is about having something people want and then getting it in front of them. You have to be able to sell something and you have to be able to fulfill it at a quality that people like. As a freelance writer, those are two distinct skill sets that you are going to have to develop over the course of your career. There is the sales, which is getting in front of people that need a writer and selling them on hiring you as their writer. And then there is doing the actual writing, delivering a quality of work that can command a higher rate, that can bring people back to want to continuously hire you over and over. These are two different skill sets, and the trajectory of your career, how successful you're going to be, how much money you're going to make, how choosy you're going to be able to be with the clients that you work with is going to come down to how well you can do both of those things. If you're an amazing writer, but you can't sell, you're not going to make a lot of money. If you're great at sales, but you're not a very good writer, you're going to be able to land the initial gigs, but you're never going to have people coming back to you for more work. So if you're serious about really succeeding in the long term, these are two skills that you're going to have to continuously and intentionally work on, focus on, possibly make even sacrifices to improve in. At one point, I took a 40% pay cut in order to work on a project that I felt was going to really increase my mastery, help me learn some things that I was weak in. And it was more important to me to increase my mastery than maximize my paycheck over a 1-year time horizon. As a result, I have made probably $700,000 more since that gig than I would have if I had just maximized my earnings that year and not taken on the project that taught me things that I've been using to this day. So how you manage that throughout your career is going to be up to you, but just keep in mind that if you want to continue rising to the top, you're going to have to be constantly working on both of those things, sales and fulfillment. So I hope this guide was simple, straightforward, and helpful for you. It also comes with a 6,000 word deep dive into how to build a copywriting business that I have on my website, or you can just Google how to become a copywriter and you'll see my article there in the first few results. Hope this was helpful for you, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next episode.